When a man gives away his power, often it's not in a dramatic or obvious moment, but in the quiet, subtle ways he abandons himself to please someone else. Power doesn't mean control over others. It means control over yourself, your emotions, your direction, your ability to decide what matters and what doesn't. Too many men forget this when they step into relationships. They allow fear, insecurity, or the desire to be loved to dictate how they move. They give up their standards, their discipline, their frame of mind because they think it will win them acceptance. But the truth is, the very moment you give away your power, you stop being the man she was drawn to in the first place. Women don't admire a man who abandons his backbone for affection. They might tolerate him. They might even use him. But deep down, they don't respect him. Respect is not demanded. It is earned. And it is earned by standing strong in who you are. Think about it this way. Every relationship is an energy exchange. You bring your energy, your confidence, your certainty, and she brings hers. When a man allows his energy to be completely dictated by a woman's moods, her approval, or her validation, he hands over the steering wheel of his life. Suddenly, he's no longer the one leading. He's reacting. He waits to see if she approves. He checks if she's happy before he makes a move, and he starts to think of himself as less important than her emotions. Over time, this dynamic kills attraction because attraction is born from polarity, one person being firmly rooted in their essence. A man rooted in himself is magnetic. A man chasing after approval is forgettable. This isn't about being cold or unfeeling. It's about balance. A strong man can be compassionate, but compassion doesn't mean weakness. You can care deeply without giving up your foundation. When you lose your foundation, you lose her respect. Imagine a tree, its branches may bend in the wind, but its roots never move. A man's power is his roots. If he abandons that to bend completely with every breeze, eventually he snaps. And when he snaps, resentment builds. He resents her for not appreciating his sacrifices, when in reality it was his choice to surrender his power. So how does a man keep his power? By mastering his emotions, by refusing to let temporary feelings dictate permanent actions. Emotions are real, but they are not reliable leaders. A woman may test your patience, challenge your decisions, or even withdraw her affection for a time. If you panic, beg, or plead, you teach her that you are ruled by fear, not by strength. But if you remain calm, grounded, and certain in yourself, you demonstrate stability, and stability is rare. Stability is attractive. Consider this when you meet someone for the first time. Confidence draws you in. It's not arrogance, it's certainty. That same certainty must be protected throughout the relationship. Too many men show confidence at the beginning, then lose it once they feel secure. They begin to accommodate every demand, not from love, but from fear of losing her. Fear is the enemy of power. The moment fear controls you, you shrink. She senses it even if she doesn't say it. She notices when you hesitate, when you look for approval before making a decision, when you allow her emotions to dictate your state of mind. At that moment, attraction shifts. She doesn't see a leader, she sees a follower, and followers rarely inspire desire. Power is also tied to purpose. If a man loses his direction because of a relationship, he has already surrendered his most valuable asset. Women are drawn to men who are driven, men who move forward with clarity, men who are lit from within by their own goals. When a man drops all of that just to be available every moment, he thinks he's showing devotion, but in reality, he's dissolving the very thing that made him captivating. Your power is your vision. Without it, you are easily swayed, easily distracted, easily consumed. Another way men give away their powers through guilt. They feel guilty for setting boundaries, guilty for saying no, guilty for choosing their purpose over temporary comfort. But guilt is just another chain that pulls you out of alignment. If you allow guilt to run your life, you're not making choices. You're reacting to pressure. Real strength is the ability to stand firm even when it's uncomfortable. Real power is saying, this is who I am and this is where I'm going, and not wavering when someone questions it. There's also the danger of over-explaining. Men often feel the need to justify their choices, to convince her why they are worthy of respect. But respect isn't earned by words. It's earned by consistency. If you have to argue for your value, you've already lost. Power is quiet. It's not about proving. It's about being. You don't need to announce that you're in control of yourself. You simply live it and people feel it. When a man refuses to hand over his power, something incredible happens. He creates polarity. He creates a dynamic where his steadiness allows her to relax into her feminine energy. She doesn't need to carry the weight of leadership because she senses he won't collapse under pressure. That doesn't mean he dominates her. It means he holds his ground so she can feel safe leaning into hers. Relationships thrive in that balance. But when a man gives away his power, everything reverses. She becomes restless. He becomes needy. She tests more, hoping he'll reclaim his strength, but he keeps giving more away. Eventually, she either loses interest or begins to take control. And the relationship turns to a parent-child dynamic rather than a partnership. That's why holding your power isn't just important. It's non-negotiable. A man's vision is the blueprint of his life. It is the compass that gives direction, the fire that fuels his actions, and the standard that keeps him aligned when distractions come. When a man lets go of that vision in order to seek approval from a woman, he abandons the very force that makes him valuable both to himself and to her. It may feel noble to sacrifice dreams for the sake of harmony, but in reality, it creates imbalance. A woman may say she wants all your attention, all your time, all your energy. But what she truly respects is a man who cannot be shaken from his mission. If you give it up to win her approval, you don't just lose your path, you lose her respect as well. Purpose is not something you put aside for convenience. It is the essence of masculinity, the heartbeat of progress. Without it, a man drifts, and a drifting man becomes weak. Approval seeking is a dangerous substitute for purpose because it can never be satisfied. The moment you place your sense of worth in someone else's hands, you are forever chasing, forever negotiating, forever bending to meet shifting expectations. One day she approves, the next day she doesn't, and you find yourself adjusting endlessly, losing more of yourself each time. The tragedy is that it's trying to gain her admiration. You slowly erase the very qualities that earned it in the beginning. Think of the men who inspire respect across history, across communities, even within families. They are remembered not for how much they bent to please, but for how relentlessly they pursued their vision. A man's mission is his backbone. It is what allows him to walk into uncertainty and not collapse. When you drop that mission to gain approval, you send a silent message. Her validation matters more than your destiny. And once that message is sent, the polarity begins to fade. A woman feels secure when she knows a man is anchored in something bigger than the relationship itself. When she sees that he is guided by a vision, she trusts his leadership. When she sees him abandon it, she begins to question his strength. Compromise is natural in relationships, but compromise is not the same as surrender. Compromise means adjusting certain details while keeping the foundation intact. Surrender, however, is when you lay down your vision entirely to appease her emotions in the moment. You skip the gym because she complains you spent too much time there. You abandon your business idea because she doubts it will work. You silence your voice because she doesn't like the discomfort of your truth. Each small surrender may seem harmless, but over time they stack up, and one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself. You become a shadow molded by her moods rather than your own clarity. The irony is that while she may initially enjoy the control, deep down she cannot respect it. A woman may test a man's resolve, but what she truly desires is for him to stand firm. If every test is met with surrender, attraction fades. Approval is a fleeting prize, and the more you chase it, the more it slips away. What remains is a hollow connection, one built on fear rather than authenticity. Fear of losing her becomes the guiding force. And fear never builds a strong foundation. A man with vision, on the other hand, radiates a different energy. He is calm when others panic, steady when others doubt, and unwavering when challenged. He doesn't need to demand respect because his dedication to his purpose commands it naturally. When he speaks, his words carry weight, not because he's louder, because they are backed by conviction. That conviction is what makes a woman trust him. She may not always agree with his direction, but she knows he has won, and that certainty allows her to relax into her own role without needing to lead his life for him. Another danger of abandoning vision for approval is resentment. At first, you may believe you're making sacrifices out of love. You tell yourself, I'll give this up because I want her to be happy. But as time passes, the emptiness grows. You start to notice the dreams you left behind, the passions you buried, the opportunities you ignored. Slowly, resentment seeps in, not just toward her, but toward yourself for allowing it. That resentment poisons the relationship, creating tension and distance. It all could have been avoided if you had chosen to remain aligned with your purpose from the beginning. The world respects men who walk their own path, and women are no different. Approval gained by surrender is fragile. It can disappear the moment you make a choice she doesn't like. But respect earned through commitment to vision lasts, but is rooted in authenticity. You cannot control her moods, her desires, or her reactions, but you can control your devotion to your purpose. That devotion makes you reliable. It makes you grounded. It makes you the kind of man who inspires, not the kind of man who begs. Every man will face moments where the temptation to compromise his vision for approval is strong. Maybe she threatens him if you don't give in. Maybe she accuses you of not caring enough. Maybe she withdraws affection to test your resolve. In those moments, the weak man been thinking that giving in will save the relationship. But in reality, giving in slowly kills it. The strong man stays true to his course. He doesn't dismiss her feelings, but he doesn't abandon his direction either. He communicates, he listens, but he never betrays himself. That unwavering strength is what keeps the connection alive. Because deep down she knows that if he won't betray himself, he won't betray her either. Chasing love that isn't reciprocated is one of the most damaging traps a man can fall into because it drains his energy, blinds his judgment, and erodes his self-worth piece by piece. When you invest time, emotion, and effort into someone who doesn't return that same energy, you're pouring water into a broken cup. It will never fill, no matter how much you give. Yet many men fall into this pattern because they confuse persistence with value, thinking that if they keep proving themselves, eventually she will see their worth. But real connection cannot be forced, and real affection cannot be begged for. When it's genuine, it flows naturally. When it isn't, no amount of effort can make it real. The core of the issue lies in scarcity thinking. A man who chases unreciprocated love believes that this one woman is the only source of fulfillment, the only opportunity for happiness. He convinces himself that if he loses her, he loses everything. That scarcity makes him tolerate half-hearted responses, minimal effort, and even disrespect. He rationalizes a lack of interest that she's just busy or she needs more time, when deep down he feels the truth. She doesn't see him the way he sees her. Instead of walking away, he doubles down, hoping his loyalty will eventually be rewarded. But loyalty to someone who doesn't value it is self-betrayal. And the longer he stays, the more he teaches himself that his own needs don't matter. Every relationship is meant to be reciprocal, a flow of energy in both directions. When you give respect, it should be met with respect. When you show effort, it should be matched with effort. When you express love, it should be returned, not necessarily in the exact same way, but in a way that leaves no doubt of its presence. When that balance doesn't exist, you are not in a partnership. You are in pursuit, and pursuit without reward slowly kills a man's spirit. It eats away at confidence, replacing it with insecurity. Instead of asking, is she right for me? He begins to ask, what is wrong with me that she doesn't want me? That shift is deadly because it erodes the foundation of self-respect. A man who chases unreciprocated love loses more than just time. He loses opportunities. While he is consumed with trying to win someone over, he overlooks those who would meet his energy with genuine interest. He blinds himself to possibilities, locking his focus on someone who has already shown through her actions that she is not invested. This tunnel vision creates stagnation. Life doesn't pause for love that never arrives. Each day spent chasing what isn't there is a day stolen from building the life you deserve. The painful truth is that attraction cannot be manufactured. A woman knows within a short time whether she feels drawn to a man or not. Interest may grow slowly, but it cannot grow from nothing. When she shows disinterest, when her actions don't match her words, when she invests the bare minimum, those are signals, not mysteries. A man who ignores those signals chooses illusion over reality. He builds castles in the sky, imagine a future that will never exist. And the higher he builds, the harder the fall when truth finally shatters the fantasy. Strength lies in the ability to recognize when love is not mutual and to walk away without bitterness. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you value yourself enough not to keep pouring into empty space. It means you trust that the right connection will meet you halfway, without force, without begging, without endless convincing. When a man can do that, he demonstrates the highest form of confidence because he shows that his worth isn't determined by one person's opinion. The fear of walking away often comes from attachment, from investing so much that you feel you can't let go. You tell yourself, I've given too much to stop now. But the truth is, the more you give to someone who didn't value it, the harder it becomes to reclaim yourself. It's not the time invested that matters. It's the quality of the investment. If you're investing in a dead end, the sooner you walk away, the sooner you free yourself to find someone who is capable of meeting you with real commitment. Love should never be a battlefield where one side fights and the other merely watches. It should never be a performance where you're constantly auditioning for approval. Real love is mutual, effortless in its reciprocity, natural in its rhythm. When you chase what isn't there, you're not only denying that truth, you're denying yourself the peace and joy that comes from a balanced connection. A woman who wants to be with you will make it known through her actions. She will match your effort. She will show up, and she will not leave you questioning your worth. Disrespect is one of the most dangerous poisons in any relationship, and yet many men tolerate it without even realizing the cost it has on their lives, their confidence, and their future. The truth is simple. What you allow is what will continue. If you accept small acts of disrespect, they don't just stay small, they grow. A sarcastic remark here, a dismissive tone there, a constant disregard for your words or your time, it all begins to stack up one day yourself in a dynamic where you're no longer seen as a man to be respected, but as someone to be managed, corrected, or even controlled. This happens not because she is naturally disrespectful, because you allowed it to become the standard. The standards you set are the boundaries that protect your value, and without those boundaries, disrespect becomes the silent killer of attraction. When a man tolerates disrespect, it's often because he fears confrontation. He tells himself it's not worth bringing up. He doesn't want to ruin the mood. Or he worries that if he stands up for himself, he'll lose her. But the irony is that by avoiding confrontation, he is slowly losing her anyway. Respect is not built on avoidance. It is built on clarity. When you refuse to speak up, you silently teach her that it is acceptable to dismiss you, ignore you, or undermine you. Over time, that behavior becomes normal, and what was once unacceptable now feels like a part of daily life. The relationship loses its balance. And because respect is the foundation of attraction, and without it, desire fades. Men often confuse patience with weakness. They believe that enduring disrespect makes them stronger or more understanding. But patience without boundaries is not strength, it is neglect. A man who respects himself will not tolerate being spoken to in a degrading way, will not accept constant criticism, and will not allow his values to be trampled. This doesn't mean he shouts, argues, or retaliates with the same energy. It means he calmly sets the line and stands by it no matter the outcome. True strength is quiet firmness, the kind that does not need to prove itself but refuses to bend when something important is on the line. Disrespect also appears in subtle ways, like constant comparisons. When a woman compares you to other men, downplays your accomplishments, or mocks your goals, she is chipping away at your confidence. If you stay silent, you give power to those words, and slowly they begin to shape how you see yourself. What you tolerate externally eventually becomes what you accept internally. Before long, you find yourself doubting your abilities, second-guessing your choices, and losing the very confidence that made you attractive in the first place. That's why tolerating disrespect is never harmless. It reshapes your entire identity. There is also a deeper psychological pattern at play. When you allow someone to disrespect you, you send a message not only to them, but also to yourself. You tell yourself that your feelings don't matter, your boundaries don't matter, your dignity doesn't matter. That internal message is dangerous because it weakens your sense of worth. And once your self-worth declines, you begin to settle in every area of life, not just in relationships. You tolerate disrespect from coworkers, friends, even strangers, because you have trained yourself to believe that this is normal. It becomes a cycle. And the longer it continues, the harder it is to break. A man who refuses to tolerate disrespect, however, sends a very different message. He demonstrates that he values himself enough to protect his peace. He shows that he is willing to walk away rather than compromise his dignity. That kind of strength doesn't repel women. It attracts them because deep down, every woman wants to feel that the man she is with has a backbone, that he is not easily broken or manipulated. A man with boundaries commands respect without having to raise his voice. His presence alone communicates, this is who I am, and I will not accept less than I deserve. Sometimes men think love requires doing everything, even disrespect. But love without respect is not love. It is dependency. If a woman does not respect you, she cannot truly love you. Because love is built on admiration. Attraction cannot survive in an environment where one person is consistently undermined. When you demand respect, you are not being controlling or harsh. You are protecting the very foundation of the relationship. Without that foundation, everything else collapses. The fear of setting boundaries often comes from the belief that she will leave if you stand firm. But the reality is that if someone leaves because you ask to be treated with respect, they were never meant to stay. Losing someone who cannot respect you is not a loss. It is a release. It frees you to build a connection where respect flows naturally, where you don't have to constantly fight to be seen or heard. And that is the kind of relationship that creates peace instead of chaos, strength instead of weakness, growth instead of decline. Attraction is a powerful force, but it is not the same as commitment. Many men make the mistake of confusing the spark of attraction with the depth of loyalty, and that misunderstanding leads to heartbreak, disappointment, and misplaced trust. A woman can be drawn to your energy, your confidence, your presence, but attraction is often temporary. It is an emotional response, a reaction to how you carry yourself, how you make her feel in the moment. Commitment, however, is a conscious decision, a choice that goes beyond feelings, rooted in respect, trust, and long-term alignment. When a man assumes that attraction guarantees loyalty, he sets himself up to be blindsided the moment the excitement fades. Attraction may bring two people together, but it does not hold them there. You may notice how quickly some connections start. Intense chemistry, endless conversations, strong physical desire. In those early moments, it feels like nothing can break the bond, but over time, reality begins to surface. Responsibilities, challenges, and differences start to test the connection. If all that was ever there was attraction, it will begin to crumble because attraction alone cannot carry the weight of commitment. Too many men ignore this, believing that if she laughs at his jokes, touches his arm, or shows interest, it automatically means she is committed to him. They invest everything too quickly, assuming loyalty before it has been earned, and then are left confused when she pulls away or gets her attention elsewhere. A woman may be deeply attracted to your confidence, but that does not mean she will remain loyal if your actions later contradict the image that drew her in. Attraction is a spark. Commitment is a fire that must be built and maintained. It requires trust, consistency, and alignment of values. If you mistake the spark for the fire, you may find yourself giving more than she is ready or willing to reciprocate. That imbalance creates a dynamic where you are investing fully while she is only half present. The danger is not in attraction itself, but in the illusion it creates when you confuse it with devotion. Another layer to this is the reality that attraction is not exclusive. A woman may be attracted to more than one man at the same time, just as you might feel attracted to more than one woman. That does not mean she is committed to all of them. It simply means she feels drawn to certain qualities. If you assume that attraction means exclusivity, you will misread her signals and end up disappointed. Commitment requires communication and agreement, not assumption. Without that clarity, you may be loyal to someone who has not promised the same in return. Men who confuse attraction with commitment often rush into giving everything too soon. They start sacrificing their goals, giving up their boundaries, and placing her at the center of their world before she has truly chosen to be there. They believe that showing devotion will secure her loyalty, but in reality, devotion without clarity can push her away. Commitment cannot be forced. It must be chosen freely. The more you try to buy loyalty with effort, the more you risk creating pressure instead of connection. It is also important to recognize that attraction is emotional, while commitment is rational. Attraction is about how you make her feel, often in the moment. Commitment is about whether she sees a future with you, whether she respects who you are, whether she believes in your direction. Feelings can change, but respect built on consistency is much harder to break. This is why you should never rely solely on attraction to determine where you stand. Look at her actions over time. Does she show up when it matters? Does she match your effort? Does she invest in building with you? Or does she simply enjoy the benefits of your energy without giving anything back? These are the markers of commitment, not the butterflies in the beginning. A wise man understands the difference and protects himself accordingly. He enjoys attraction for what it is, but does not build his entire life around it. He values commitment enough to wait for it, to observe her behavior over time, and to see whether her actions align with her words. This patience not only prevents heartbreak, but also raises your value because it shows that you are not desperate for affection. You are discerning. A man who can tell the difference between temporary interest and lasting devotion commands more respect than a man who blindly invests in anyone who shows him attention. This distinction also ties back to self-respect. When you respect yourself, you are not fooled by temporary emotions. You don't confuse a moment of laughter or a spark of chemistry for proof of loyalty. You understand that commitment must be proven, not assumed. And when you live from that mindset, you naturally attract women who are serious about building something real because they can sense that you won't settle for surface level connection. One of the most costly mistakes a man can make is abandoning his self-respect for temporary validation because the need to be liked, accepted, or praised often leads to decisions that chip away at the very foundation of his dignity. Validation is intoxicating in the moment. It feels good to be admired, to be desired, to be told that you are enough. But when it becomes the driving force behind your actions, you lose yourself. A man who chases validation is no longer living from strength. He is living from emptiness, seeking constant reassurance to cover the cracks in his self-esteem. This pattern may bring him moments of pleasure, but it always leaves him hollow because validation from others can never replace respect for himself. When you put external approval above internal alignment, you are giving away your power. You allow the opinions of others to dictate your choices, your moods. Even your self-image. If she compliments you, you feel high. If she criticizes you, you feel worthless. Your emotional state becomes dependent on a reaction, and that dependency is dangerous because it robs you of stability. True strength comes from being grounded in who you are regardless of who is watching or what they say. When you abandon self-respect to chase validation, you are like a leaf in the wind, always moving, never rooted, blown in whichever direction external approval takes you. This hunger for validation often shows up in subtle ways. It's in the man who constantly agrees even when he disagrees, hoping to avoid conflict and win approval. It's in the man who overshares or tries too hard to impress, thinking that if he reveals enough or entertains enough, she will like him more. It's in the man who sacrifices his standards and boundaries, saying yes when he should say no, all because he fears that standing firm might push her away. What he doesn't realize is that every time he abandons his own voice to please someone else, he loses a piece of himself. Over time, those pieces add up until nothing is left but a shell of man who is defined entirely by how others see him. The tragedy is that validation rarely satisfies. The more you get, the more you crave. It becomes an addiction. You start depending on compliments, on attention, on approval to feel worthy, and when it isn't there, you feel restless and insecure. This dependency gives others power over you because they can control you simply by giving or withholding their validation. A woman who senses this may test it, consciously or unconsciously, by pulling back her attention to see how you react. If you collapse, panic, or chest, you reveal that your center is outside of yourself. Attraction withers because respect is lost. No one can admire a man who does not first admire himself. On the other hand, when a man lives from self-respect, he does not need validation to feel valuable. He appreciates it when it comes, but he does not rely on it. His sense of worth is internal, built on the choices he makes, the standards he upholds, and the way he lives his life. He does not say yes just to be liked. He says yes when it aligns with his values. He does not remain silent out of fear. He speaks when something matters. He does not compromise his dignity for attention. He remains consistent, even if it means standing alone. That kind of strength commands respect because it's rare. Most people bend for approval. A man who refuses to bend becomes unforgettable. The cost of abandoning self-respect for validation is also seen in the long term. A man who constantly seeks to be liked ends up in relationships where he is never truly valued. He attracts people who use his neediness, who know they can manipulate him with small doses of attention. These relationships leave him drained and bitter, yet he continues the cycle because he has trained himself to prioritize validation over self-worth. Breaking free from this cycle requires a shift in mindset, realizing that respect, once lost, is far harder to regain than attention. Validation fades, but dignity lasts. Another truth to understand is that validation is conditional. It changes with moods, situations, and preferences. One day she may praise you, the next day she may criticize you, and if your identity is tied to those shifts, you will live in constant emotional turmoil. Self-respect, however, is unconditional. It does not depend on her mood, her words, or her behavior. It is a commitment you make to yourself that no one can take away. That inner commitment creates stability. And stability is one of the most attractive qualities a man can possess. A man who values self-respect above validation also attracts a different caliber of relationship. He does not draw in those who want to control or manipulate because his boundaries make it clear that such behavior will not work. Instead, he attracts women who respect strength, who value authenticity, who are willing to meet him at the level of mutual respect. Validation may attract attention, but self-respect attracts loyalty. And that loyalty is far more valuable than any compliment or momentary praise.